As we awoke to the horrified scream shattering the silence of night, it didn't take more than a second for my protective instincts to kick in. I grabbed my bat and ran upstairs to my children's bedroom. My wife followed behind me, ready to face any danger the world had to offer in order to keep our kids safe. Just at the top of the stairs, we immediately saw the smoke and heard the crackling fire coming from inside their room. And as I burst through the door, I could see the twin boys already turned to charred bits of flesh, while our youngest daughter sat unfazed alone in her own bed. Defying all logic, the fire didn't seem to spread. It was locked to our sons' burning bodies. They were dead before we even opened the doors. Even in the chaos, instinct to save whatever I could prevailed. I rushed over to my daughter and got ready to grab her and run. No sooner had my hands touched her before I felt a searing pain in my palms. Despite seeming perfectly fine, her body had turned to an uncontrollable source of heat. "Joanna!" I managed to get out as I stared at my burned hands. Then the fire suddenly cleared, leaving 2 charred bodies in a smoke-filled room. Joanna lifted her head and stared into my eyes. Her pupils had turned unnaturally large, occupying the entirety of her eyes. Mary sat hunched over by her sons, screaming at the loss of our twins. But I couldn't do the same. I was broken from shock. I couldn't take my eyes off Joanna. Despite the idea going against all logic, I knew she had been the one to kill her brothers, but I couldn't fathom why or how. "Did you do this?" I asked in a merely shaky whisper. But instead of giving an answer, she just smiled in return. She reached out her hand, her palms glowing with fire, and I took a few steps back in fear. Whatever creature was sitting in that bed might have looked like our daughter, but it wasn't her. In our part of the world, there wasn't a major hospital near every village. When things like this happened, the local doctor was called, if only to confirm the deaths before the bodies were taken away. In our case, he also came to check up on our daughter. We tried to warn him not to touch her, but suspecting foul play or abuse on our end, he insisted on talking with her alone. The police stood idly by outside, ready to interfere if need be. All the while, Joanna remained in her bed, not moving an inch. The doctor closed the door to get some privacy. I knew it would be a terrible idea, but what could I say against the police and the doctor, who thought we were the culprits? "Hello, Joanna. My name is Dr. Woodrow. I'd like to ask you a few questions if that's all right," we heard the doctor say through the door. But as before, Joanna wouldn't respond. "It's okay if you're afraid, Joanna, but I'm here to—" "Oh, God!" His words quickly turned to agonized screams as the same blazing fire took over. With clear trepidation lighting up in their eyes, the police officers tried to open the door, but it had gotten inexplicably locked. They tried breaking it down, but by the time they could even get a proper kick in, the doctor had burned to death. The officers went to grab Joanna, much to my protest. No sooner had they touched her, before they too ignited in a hellish blaze that charred their skin and broke their bones. In the span of a day, 5 people had been killed by our daughter. But the thing about living in an obscure, small village is that no large news outlets are going to run with a story they believe is a myth. Over the next few days and weeks, several people contacted us with advice on how to deal with the situation, all locals. And throughout it all, one idea stood above all others: that our daughter had been possessed by some sort of entity. We weren't given any time to grieve the loss of our sons, because we had to stay focused. We had to save the only bit of family we had left. 3 weeks after the deaths, Joanna still hadn't left her room. She didn't eat, drink, or sleep. She just sat in bed and observed us whenever we entered. For each passing day, she got thinner, almost hollowed out. Whatever had taken over her was consuming her essence. And that's how we came to meet a man simply known as the pastor, an obscure priest seemingly experienced in the art of exorcism. Unlike the rest of the people we talked to, he didn't seem uncertain nor afraid. He met us at our home, entering without saying a single word. He took a few steps inside, looked around the room, before a frown formed on his face. "She's already dead," he said without even seeing her. "No, she's not. She's up there. She's just not herself," my wife said. "Her body might still be alive, but her spirit is too far gone." "There has to be something you can do. Please, we're begging you," I said. "This demon's oral signature is unknown to me. It's strong, and it's directly feeding off your daughter's soul. Even if I banish it from her body, your daughter, who she used to be, is long gone. The fact that her physical form is still kept together is a wonder in itself." "But you'll try?" He saw the look of desperation on our faces, and knowing the story about our sons might have given him the final push of empathy needed to help us. He nodded. "Tonight then, just past midnight, we need it dark. Cover up the windows, turn off the electricity, and bring candles or lanterns as sources of light. I'll take care of the rest." With that, he just left. I looked at my wife with a glimmer of hope, but the thought of our burning boys had tainted the love we had for our daughter. Logically, we realized that it wasn't her fault, but the image had been burned into our minds. That day, we just sat on our front porch with our eyes fixed on the road, just waiting for the pastor to come back. We didn't eat, drink, nor did we speak a single word to each other. We just sat idly by and waited. All the while, our daughter was trapped inside her own body, held at bay by a demon. A cool, uncomfortable wind dragged through the neighborhood as the last rays of sunshine gave way to the darkness of night. For each passing second, the clock ticked closer to midnight. We held our breaths in anticipation. When the street suddenly lit up, it was a car driving up to our house, a pitch-black Ford Cortina, probably older than myself. The pastor stepped out in his gown, holding on a book with an upside-down, burning cross displayed on the front. "In any other case, I'd ask you to leave," he began. "But unless she hears your voices, there won't be anything to bring her back. You can help me." We nodded without hesitation. There was no power in the world strong enough to stop us. "Shall we begin?" he asked. We followed him upstairs to our children's room. The walls were covered in a black, tar-like substance that seemed to emit from our daughter. She was barely recognizable as a human being, just skin barely attached to their bones. She silently observed us with that same horrific smile, one that only slightly faded when she saw the book the pastor was holding. Without giving her a chance to move, the pastor opened it and started speaking. The words that emitted from his mouth were from a language none of us had ever heard before. At first, it sounded like something akin to Latin, but it was twisted, dark, and full of malice. "What is he saying?" my wife asked. "I don't know," was all I could stutter back. The words seemed to physically hurt Joanna. Her screams were mere hisses at first, but they quickly turned to low-pitched growls. Her body writhed around in pain as she tried to escape, but the words froze her in place. She couldn't leave. She could only listen as the words penetrated her soul and attacked the demon within. "You're hurting her!" my wife yelled as she tried to approach the pastor, but I held her back. Just as I grabbed her, the whole room fell silent. The pastor shut his book with a resounding bang, and that was it. Joanna fell limp on the bed. I thought it was over, but then pillars of black goo shot out from her mouth along with a smoke-like figure. Then another and another. Dozens of creatures escaped our daughter's body and phased through the wall like it was nothing. They were out of sight before we could even react, but in their wake, our daughter looked almost human again. I rushed to grab her, cradling her in my arms, just hoping to feel a hint of life still within. She coughed a couple of times, then her chest started to move with her breaths. "Oh, thank God," I let out in relief. But then I noticed the horrified look on the pastor's face. What have I done?" he asked himself. "What's wrong?" "There shouldn't have been more than one. It's not possible," he mumbled. Flashes of the multiple creatures pouring out from Joanna stuck in my mind as I realized that our daughter had never been possessed by just a single demon, but countless horrific monsters that had now been released into our town. "This will be the end of us," the pastor mumbled. In the following days, we saw less and less people on the streets. Rumors of entire families dying spread like wildfire, too fast for any real help to reach our little, isolated town. Whatever had been trapped within our daughter was quickly taking more vessels and were seemingly using humans as portals to bring more demons to our world. Our daughter was indeed special, her body the perfect breeding ground for demons from a dimension we weren't meant to comprehend. And through her, they learned to do the same to others. Had we just let her die from the inside, the demons would have remained in the underworld where they belong. But our love, our need to save her, has doomed the entire town. Maybe even the world. I'm sorry. Hey guys, I want to take a minute to thank NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Just this past year, I have had multiple online hackers attempt to steal sensitive information stored on my personal computer. Luckily, I was protected by NordVPN's double encryption technology, which prevented the hackers from being able to steal anything. Now when I'm hanging out in public places or traveling, I no longer have to worry about getting hacked. It gives me incredible peace of mind for only $3.49 per month. For the same price as your morning coffee, you can easily prevent online hackers from stealing sensitive information, such as your bank account credentials and credit card information. They've even added a cool new feature called the Dark Web Monitor, which immediately notifies you if your email credentials have been leaked to the dark web. Another awesome feature is that you're able to access all your favorite movies and TV shows on Netflix from anywhere in the world. NordVPN is compatible on all major devices, so you can easily download it for free on the App Store or Google Play Store. They also allow you to log in up to 6 devices simultaneously, which has been very useful for me. And if you're not satisfied with their VPN for any reason, they provide a money-back guarantee within the first 30 days. Take advantage of NordVPN's Cyber Month deal today by going to nordvpn.com/drnosleep. And be sure to use coupon code DRNOSLEEP at sign-up. You'll get 73% off a 2-year plan, plus 1 month completely free. That's nordvpn.com/drnosleep. And be sure to use coupon code DRNOSLEEP at sign-up. You can find the link in the description below. Now time for the next story. I let the sand caress my body as I lay on the beach, listening to the soft sound of the waves. All that hung above were perfect, blue skies, only interrupted by a couple of white clouds and a palm tree casting the ideal amount of shade on my resting spot. Everything was perfect, so much that I almost forgot how I'd gotten there. The beach, the untouched ocean ahead, and the sounds of seagulls were all fake. I was dreaming, but I couldn't remember falling asleep, just that the world I had unknowingly entered was a figment of someone else's imagination. Then I heard the wet squishes almost obscured by the waves, and the weak whimpers muffled by the ground below. The world faded before my eyes, and reality came back into view. Something wet and warm was pouring down my arms and chest, and in my hand I held the knife I used to stab my wife to death. The last light in her eyes vanished as she let out her last breath. "Why?" she whispered as the life left her body. Silence. I knew that I'd killed her, but I wasn't in control. While my mind slept peacefully, my body had kept moving absent myself. I couldn't even cry or scream. I could just sit there in shock as I held her limp body. The only sound that broke the silence was a soft voice that I couldn't tell the origin of. "Thanks for letting me," it whispered. Then I heard sirens. Apparently the neighbors had heard her scream and called the police. Obviously I didn't resist, nor did I deny anything that had happened. I just told them the truth, that I had blacked out. Due to the nature of the homicide I'd committed, a psychiatrist was called in to determine whether or not to send me to prison or a high-security asylum. Throughout each and every interview, interrogation, examination, the only picture that occupied my mind was the body of my dead wife. She'd been the love of my life, and from every angle, it had been the perfect relationship. I had no secret desires to kill people, nor did I wish pain upon anyone, yet my hands had been the instruments ending her life. But had it really been me? "You're not crazy," the voice in my head said, "and you're not going to prison." Despite my actions, I had been deemed a low-flight risk inmate. Thus, I was held in a low-security institution as they examined me. But for each passing day, the voice got more intense, begging for me to attempt an escape. It told me all possible exit strategies, ones I couldn't possibly know about. "You see that guard? He has a bum knee. You kick it once and he'll fall like a house of cards. He won't even try to chase you," the voice would say. I kept refusing. I told the psychiatrist about the voices, but all he did was give me some tables I didn't recognize, but they wouldn't work. On the 7th day of the investigations, the voice was particularly aggressive. As I tried to fight it, I could feel my limbs go flaccid. I lost control, and the world before my eyes started to fade. Within a few minutes, I was just gone. Once I regained consciousness, I was back on the idyllic beach with the perfect sand. I lay there, the memories of my real life quickly fading. All the suffering, the flashbacks, they were all gone, replaced by absolute nirvana. Then I heard a familiar voice. "Derek?" my wife called out from a distance. I shot to my feet, immediately forgetting that she was supposed to be dead. There she stood at the edge of the water, letting the smallest waves brush up against her feet. "Fiona?" I asked, not entirely sure if my eyes were deceiving me or not. My mind was starting to put the pieces together, but they were foggy, hazy fragments creating an unclear picture. I knew the beach wasn't real, but I couldn't remember where I was supposed to be. "Where are we?" I asked. "I'm not sure," she responded. "But does it matter as long as we're together?" I shook my head. "No, it doesn't. But," the words froze in my throat, You're dead." "Am I?" she asked, not in a surprised manner, but as if teasing me. "Then how am I here?" She was real. We just weren't in the world of the living. I started walking towards her, longing to hold her in my arms once again. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. Before I could even touch her perfect skin, I felt my feet lose contact with the ground, and I was dragged back into the real world once more. Here we are, the voice inside my head said as I woke up. I was in an alleyway, my hands and chest covered in blood just like last time. We'd escaped and clearly killed someone on the way. I fell to my knees and puked out the little contents still within my stomach. Instead of food, a thick, black, oil-like substance shot out to the ground. What the f*** is happening to me? You're serving a greater purpose, the voice said. What? Who even are you? Am I crazy? I asked in a hail of questions. No, you're not crazy. I am very, very real, the voice said. Then who or what are you? I asked. I am the Dreamweaver, and you are my vessel. I got back on my feet and tried to get an idea of my surroundings. I wasn't in my own city. I could tell that much solely based on the height of the structures. I stumbled onto the street, fully intending to get a hold of a police officer and turn myself in. Hey man, you all right? An elderly man asked as he saw me stumble towards the street. I need you to call the police, was the first thing I said. He must have thought the blood was mine, because he seemed more concerned than afraid. But as the man pulled his phone out, the world vanished beneath my feet yet again, and I was returned to the dreamscape I wished could be home. But that time, the memory of the real world didn't elude me, and I knew I was the one that had killed my wife. You're back, Fiona said. This place isn't real, Fiona, and neither are you. I killed you. I remember it. I know, but that wasn't you, Derek, she said without the faintest hint of anger in her voice. You remember? I asked. Of course, but it wasn't your fault. It was the Dreamweaver. You need to get rid of it, she said. I can't, I said. Yes, you can. You just need to find him. Find who? I asked. They call him the Pastor. With these parting words, I was pulled back to reality, and before my feet lay another dead man. It was the elderly guy who tried to help me. He didn't even know me, but he showed concern for a stranger, and it had cost him his life. This is what happens when you bring innocent people into our journey. Let it serve as a warning, the voice said. I didn't respond. I'd already made up my mind that I'd ignore the voice. I wouldn't interact with people. I wouldn't ask for help. I would just silently search for the pastor. It was only then I would catch a glimpse of myself in a mirror, and I noticed the length of my beard. How long had I been blacked out and trapped in a dream? It had felt like mere moments, but clearly my body had been through a lot more than my mind. Weeks, if not months, had passed since my first arrest, but I was free. The next few weeks I spent just trying to kill myself, not only to protect the world from myself, but because I couldn't live with what I'd unconsciously done. But for each attempt, the demon would take over and save me, oftentimes killing people in the process, and each time a few weeks would be gone from my mind. During that time, I was always returned into the arms of my wife, waiting for me at the beach of the afterlife, and each time, she'd repeat the urgent need to find the pastor. That was the only solution. But I decided right there that once I had freed myself from the demon, I would finally end my own life. From then on, I resorted to only traveling at night. I got an idea of the new world I'd landed in, a future that had passed me by. My wife had died in 2017, but the current year was 2021. For months, I traversed the country, only suffering a few blackouts where someone would inevitably die. I didn't even have to think about running from the police. The demon would take care of that for me. At some level, I must have known that the demon could read my mind, or at least must have been aware of my plan to some degree, yet he never halted me. I was free to search for the pastor, a fact that should have bothered me, but I was too fixated on escape. I looked up news articles about possession, browsed forums, visited libraries, until I finally got an address, a place situated in a small village far away from civilization. I didn't hesitate even for a moment. To me, the pastor signified the one thing I so desperately wanted, freedom to just die. The streets were mostly abandoned, as the village had clearly seen better days, but it didn't matter. I found the pastor's house without much trouble, and knocked on his door in anticipation. An old man opened the door, frail and tired from years of unknown struggle. His face turned pale as he saw me, and without having met the man before, I could immediately tell that he recognized me. You, he let out in a gasp. Me, the voice inside my head said, audible not to myself, but the pastor as well. How did you find me? He asked. It shouldn't have been possible. The voice let out a quick laugh. I didn't find you, he did, it said, clearly referring to me. That's when I realized why the demon hadn't attempted to stop me. He wanted me to find the pastor, and with that, I again lost control of myself. The demon was in charge, but that time, it didn't send me to the beach. It didn't need to anymore, because it had reached its goal. using a fake world and the image of my wife to lure me in. It has now been 5 months since the demon slaughtered the pastor, tore his flesh to pieces without breaking a sweat. We're still traversing the world, searching for more victims. But now the demon doesn't even allow me to sleep in the dream world he himself created for me. I'm an unwilling passenger, forced to witness the suffering of others. Now that I'm typing this, I'm not even sure I'm the one in control. The words are mine, but I'm not the one moving my fingers. I guess the demon, the Dreamweaver, wants you to know that he exists, but I beg of you, if you ever see me walking down the street, just run, and don't look back, because you just might be his next victim. Hey everyone, if you enjoy these stories, be sure to check out the Dr. No Sleep podcast by clicking the Spotify link in the description below. There you will find more nightmarish horror stories not yet featured on my channel. For iPhone users, just search Dr. No Sleep in the search bar on Apple Podcasts. Now back to the story. I immediately shot up in bed, drenched in sweat as I heard the church bells ring in the distance. It was still pitch black outside, and the clock read just past 4 in the early morning, meaning the first rays of daylight were peeking above the horizon. My wife lay peacefully beside me, not easily awakened even by the sound that might very well have ended our lives. "Honey, Alice, you gotta wake up," I said as I shook her. As she came to, she too heard the sound of the bells, and I could see the immediate panic in her eyes. "The kids!" she shouted. It was a drill we'd practiced a dozen times before. Everyone in town knew what the ringing of the bells meant, that we were all in imminent danger. Our task was simple: get dressed in a hurry, grab the kids, and escape to the church, our only refuge from the oncoming storm. Our kids were already up and getting dressed. Even at the age of 7 and 9, they knew exactly what to do. "I'm ready, Mommy," Dylan said almost proudly. My wife grabbed him while I took care of Johnny. "Let's go," I said as we rushed out the door. Driving wouldn't be an option. Vehicles tended to malfunction during these events. The sky had turned gray, with thick, gray fog falling from the sky. Time was short, and if we didn't get to the church in the next 15 minutes, we'd all be dead. But we were among the lucky ones, living only 10 minutes away by foot. Those who originally lived in the outskirts of town had mostly relocated or had already been taken by the Murmillos. Demons, forged in battle from tainted souls, merged together into incomprehensible messes. They wished for nothing but death, craved only suffering. They were a creation of pure evil, an accident perfectly suited for hell. The church was situated atop of the hill, tended to by a single man, just known as the pastor. He was the only one capable of preventing the town from total annihilation, gifted with the divine knowledge he couldn't part with, even had he wanted to. Most of his life had been spent hunting down demons and exiling them from our plane of existence. While a fair share of them always found their way back, he'd saved countless lives. As we made our way up the hill, we were met by a few dozen people, the last survivors of our town, all rushing within as the fog touched the ground. We'd always kept track of the inhabitants, and by the time of the last event, we were down to only 43. "Where's the pastor?" I asked as we got inside. "He's not here yet. You didn't see him on the way?" one of the women asked. She was Miriam, one of the last remaining school teachers, responsible for making sure everyone had gotten inside safely. But as much as she cared, there was little she could do if someone missed the deadline. I shook my head, quickly looking over the room, hoping to see the pastor. But in his absence, all I could see were frightened faces. If he didn't arrive by the time the church bells stopped ringing, he'd be locked outside. The demons could not get through the doors if they were closed, not without a vessel anyway. That's why they had to be firmly shut before the fog touched the ground. "It's too late. We gotta close the door," Miriam said. With that, a couple of guys dressed in robes closed the doors. The bells fell silent, and a bunch of torches and candles were lit to keep the building away from the falling darkness. Miriam ordered everyone to sit down and went around counting each and every one of the survivors. 39, 40, she counted out loudly before stopping. "There are 3 people missing, including the pastor." None of us spoke a word. As much as we wanted to save the latecomers, we knew they were already dead. But without the pastor there to keep us safe, we hadn't the faintest clue what might come next. 3 vessels, I mumbled, knowing the fate of each missing person. See, the demons themselves could do nothing as long as we didn't leave the church during the event. The pastor had made sure of that. But once a vessel had been found, there was no limit to the horrors they could commit. And without the pastor there to exorcise and exile the demons, we could do nothing except wait for our inevitable demise. "What are we going to do?" Johnny asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. Then the knocking began, soft at first, barely a thump on the door. "Do you think it's one of the survivors?" Alice asked. "Demons don't knock. We should open up," one of the survivors suggested. "F like that, no one outside could possibly still be alive, another one said. What if it's the pastor? I suggested. But the knocking didn't sound erratic or urgent at all. They were just rhythmic, slow thumps, slowly getting louder. We never opened the door, Miriam said sternly. We just have to wait it out like always. What about the demons? If they found vessels, they'll try to get in, Alice said. The doors are reinforced. They'll hold, Miriam responded, trying to sound confident, but anyone that knew her could tell it was a facade. We stepped away from the knocks as they kept getting louder. Then something started knocking on one of the boarded-up windows in the back. Same rhythm, quiet at first, but getting louder. Oh God, we're going to die, a man shouted. As he finished that hopeless sentence, the third knock began. With each passing sound, the knocks got louder, harder, but never changed in frequency. They quickly surpassed the strength of any human, and before long, small cracks were formed where the demons were knocking. Within minutes, they'd be inside. I kept hoping for the pastor to come and save us, but even he was little more than a mortal man, one that had surely perished in the fog. We have to run, Miriam suddenly said. As soon as the doors break, just run, get out of town. We'll die, I shot back in shock. Most of us, yes, but a few might get out. We don't have any other choice. As much as I was hoping for a miraculous rescue, I knew she was right. I tried to come up with another feasible survival plan, but the loud bang of shattering wood broke my train of thought. The doors were opening, a few more knocks, and the demons would come inside. Alice and I grabbed our kids and got ready to run. Here they come! With that, the doors blew open, exploding in a hail of wood fragments. The pastor stood there, his abdomen cut open and his eyes dug out. He'd clearly been killed prior to the event, meaning he'd been taken as a vessel even after death. The other two were mere teenagers, two boys who always hung out together. Run! All at once, every single person started rushing past the demons. In the poorly attempted escape, 10 people immediately attacked in the span of 5 seconds. Their bodies were torn to shreds, and their screams short-lived as their guts hit the ground. My family made it out with only a few scratches, but that didn't mean we were safe. Once outside, the Murmillos could finally take hold of us as their vessels. One by one, the survivors fell to demons violently entering their bodies. Many broke in the process, some even crumbling apart from the sheer force of entry. But we couldn't help. We just kept running. I'm not even sure what happened. But in the mess of it all, I lost track of Alice and Dylan. They'd been right behind me from the start, but suddenly, they just weren't there. I stopped for a brief moment, calling out for my wife and child. But deep inside, I knew they'd already been taken. Where's Mommy? Johnny asked as I held him in my arms. She's coming soon, I lied. The air around us had quickly fallen silent, presumably because everyone else had already died. I'd only gotten halfway through town, but I couldn't carry on any longer. The demons, bound and unbound, would come for us at any moment, so I searched for the closest shelter, if only to buy a moment of time. Why are you stopping here? Johnny asked. We just need to hide out for a bit, okay? I boarded up the door, knowing it wouldn't help. Our only chance was for them not to notice our presence. Is Mommy coming? He asked. Yes, of course. We just gotta wait and be real quiet. But how will she find us then? He asked. She will. Everything will be all right. There was nothing more I could do, except to warn whoever accidentally stumbled into our little town. So I sat down and started writing this note, hoping that someone would find it after our deaths. Hopefully it'll serve as enough of a warning that anyone who reads it just turns around and leaves before they hear the sound of the church bells ringing. Goodbye. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video. You can also check out some more of my animated horror stories right here.